They came with hope, with pride, with duty etched into their hearts. The Windrush generation, men and women who crossed oceans to serve a country that was not always kind in return. This is their story, a story of sacrifice, courage and resilience.
One value that they instill in you from day one is the fact that, when you put a uniform on, you're an ambassador for the service and the country. So I knew if I kept my head down and applied myself, I should, all things being equal, come out on top.
Careers was the selling point. Secondly, I knew nothing. The opportunity to go out and learn, it wasn't amongst us at that time, unfortunately.
My dad said, "You're not going," and he wouldn't sign the paper. My mum said, "She's going to go because there's nothing else here."
I always fancied the army, but my mother was always slightly against it. And my idea was to go in as a junior soldier, but she was against it. So I thought, when I'm 18, I'm going.
I remember saying to my father, "You know what, Dad? I'm going to go and look after him." And from that was the reason why I joined the army.
They would make their way to my bed and they'd be saying, "Get back on your banana boat," blah, blah, blah. And they were saying this in front of everybody else. Now, that was the most difficult time in my Air Force career.
You have to depend on those guys to get your back. So I got the back, they got my back. So it was a union there, it was a bond up until today, you know what I mean? Even out of the military, I still got those friends.
So I believe there's an invisible force that's pushed me to come this far. Then if it's the universe, if it's God, but that's what's kept me going to where I am now. There's something, it's pushed me to keep going.
So she said, "You're never going to make it. You're not going to make it. So you might as well hand in your notice now and leave." And within, I think it was like 14 months, she promoted me.
I've got to give the army good thing for what they've done, because they're giving me something good. I'm proud of what I am, and the blackness gives me anyway. I'm proud of what I am.
You're born here in this country. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You're damn well British. End of story, case closed.
It will be with me for all the time, the fact, and all the people I've met in the military, they will always be with me, I believe. Yeah.
From the trenches of the First World War to the barracks of post-war Britain, their journey is one of pride and paradox. Through sacrifice, they forged a legacy. Through struggle, they demanded belonging. This is their voice, their truth, and their unyielding contribution to the fabric of a nation. In the late 18th century, the West India Regiment was founded to defend Britain's Caribbean colonies. Born of necessity, yet burdened with contradiction, black soldiers eager to serve, yet told they could not fight. A military that needed their strength, but denied them equality. Why would any black person enlist in the armed forces of an empire that often saw them as lesser? And yet they did. For some it was a calling, for others an escape, but for all it was a battle, one fought not just on the front lines, but in the barracks, in the streets, in the very fabric of British society. Across the 19th century, as Britain conquered its empire, black soldiers served. The West India regiments were dispatched to Sierra Leone. They fought in imperial wars in Africa in the 1860s, 1870s and 1890s. When the First World War broke out in 1914, 15,000 Jamaicans came forward to fight. All faced discrimination and racism. White generals were reluctant to use black soldiers on active service. Black people in Britain tried to enlist too. George Roberts, born in Trinidad but living in Britain, served in the Battle of the Somme and at the Dardanelles in Turkey. Walter Tull, whose father was Barbadian, was commissioned as the first known black officer in 1917. Despite the contribution of black soldiers in the First World War, in 1938, Army Order 89 restricted entry into the British Army to men of pure European descent. When the Second World War started in 1939, the same racism stood in the way of black willingness to serve. But the Royal Air Force, short of men, began to recruit in the West Indies. About 6,000 men and some women served as pilots, navigators and flight engineers.
Within the army regiments there's been a black presence since 1715, and whenever regiments are deployed to Yorkshire, the black soldiers are with them. So black soldiers can be found serving in Yorkshire. Some black soldiers are already resident before enlisting, and some black soldiers marry in Yorkshire, and some black soldiers die in Yorkshire up to the 1840s. What you've got is a group of men who did raise their heads above the parapet and who did make difficult decisions. But what they do is they serve to give us a time where we were united. And the descendants of the black soldiers are still amongst us. And the safety that they fought for, we still enjoy. We just need to remember who gave us that.
After the war, aboard the Empire Windrush were hundreds from the Caribbean who had fought for Britain and now looked for a new home. Between 1948 and 1972, people from across the Caribbean came to the UK, both at the request of the UK government and with dreams of building a life on their own terms. They were known as the Windrush generation. Here they found both opportunity and obstacles, factories in need of workers, but also neighbours slow to accept. Cold winters replaced the warm Caribbean sun, yet they brought with them a resilience that would see them through these new challenges and allow them to build lives for themselves and their children, who by the 1970s were soon to hear the call of service in the armed forces. In doing so, they wove themselves into the very fabric of Huddersfield and West Yorkshire, an enduring thread of belonging, pride and quiet revolution.
My name is Dexter David. I joined the military in 1979, a cold December of 1979, and I left the military in 1992.
My name is Erin Phillips. I live in Slathwaite. I was born in, well, I think we lived at Birkby when I was born. So I was born in Princess Royal Maternity Home. And I joined the army in 1978 as a junior leader.
So my name now is Joyce Britton. I joined the army as Joyce Dick from Huddersfield. I joined in October 1975, just after my 17th birthday. I was 17 in September, and I left the army in May of 1983.
My name is Michael Senior. I joined the Air Force in 1980, March the 12th. My birthday is on March the 11th, so as soon as I turned 18, I went in on March the 12th, and I came out in 1986.
My name is Milton Brown. I served in the RAF from 1980 to 86, and I was an RAF regiment gunner.
My name's Terry, full name Terry Primus. Sunday name is Terence. So took the oath on the 11th in Leeds office and went off to Swinderby December the 12th, 1979.
My name is Mark Anthony Mullings. My parents are originally from Jamaica. So yeah, in St. Elizabeth, my dad from St. Elizabeth and my mother is from Kingston. So they get together and have me.
I joined the armed service about the 5th of February 1971. What influenced to say there's careers? Careers was the selling point. Secondly, I knew nothing. You know, my mum, unfortunately, when she came over here, all she knew about was farming as well.
Name's Lynn Romson. I was in the military, the Army Reservists, which is called the Territorial Army. I was in it for 39 years and 9 months.
My name's Horace Fleary. I joined the British Forces in 1979 and I came out of the force in 1992. Yeah, I joined the Royal Artillery, but my last 3 years I joined a unit of the Royal Artillery. It was called 29 Commandos, which we did more surveillance work than anything else. Yeah.
The war may have ended, but for those who served, a different fight began. A fight for respect, a fight for belonging. In the 60s, 70s and 80s, Britain was changing, but change did not come easy. Black soldiers faced battles of a different kind. Racism in the ranks, closed doors in civilian life, a nation that struggled to see them as its own. Yet they endured, they built lives, they formed communities, and through it all, they held their heads high.
My dad came over in 1960, I think it was November 1960, and he came over with a few friends of the family, and then he brought my mum over about a year later. I was born in 62.
My parents come from Grenada. They come from a little island which is 15 square miles called Carriacou. That's where they both came from. They came over to the UK in the early 50s. My dad arrived about 54 and my mother arrived about 56.
My mother arrived in England from Jamaica in 1956. My father arrived from Jamaica in 1957. My mother was from Mandeville and my father was from St. Elizabeth.
My parents came from Carriacou, which is an island off Grenada, and they landed in, my father landed in 1955 and my mother came over afterwards in 1957. They moved up to Huddersfield in around 1960. I'm not sure the actual date though, but around 1960 to work in the mill.
My mum and dad came from Jamaica. Dad came to Britain in 1958. He lived in a place called Sandy Bay, the parish of Hanover. My mother came here in 1960 and she came from Kingston, the capital of Jamaica.
When I was at school, I associated, I was called the Pokeman, because I used to hang around with white people all the time. And I was even alienated by black folk because I hung out with whites, because I didn't like myself, so that's why I used to hang out with white people. And then I hung out with a couple of lads, Eddie Hart, and he joined the Army Cadets, and he invited me to go along and join, so I joined the Army Cadets at 11 or 12, I think. I was 11, I might have been 11 when I joined the Army Cadets.
I lived in Springwood Avenue, which is just above the ring road now. At the time when we got there, there wasn't a ring road. But we moved up into Springwood Avenue there.
So Fartown, this is my neighbourhood. The Grove, the stream, and just literally 1 block away, you've got the big park. It was a very, very safe environment. We knew, I think there's about 34 houses around here, and we moved with 24, 25 of the families.
There was a lot of Grenadian and Carriacou community families up there. Lots of my cousins, aunties and relatives were living in Springwood at the time.
Although it was great outside of the home, inside the house, lots and lots of love. Mum and Dad showed love to me, my brother and my sister. There was a lot of love to their neighbours as well.
So there was loads of family to go by all the time, loads of family celebrations happening all the time.
But I cannot deny, when my dad came in from work, the whole house was on edge because he was discriminated against at work. And when Mum was trying to calm him down, he'd get even twice as angry because he just felt that nobody understood him.
It was great in the fact that all the children would hang out together. You know, we kind of like started our lives and grew up together through that in that area. It was a great place to be at the time in the 1960s and the 1970s.
For many of the Windrush generation and their descendants, the decision to join the military was not born of naivety. They grew up in communities where opportunities were scarce, where the promise of a steady wage was not always fulfilled.
So I enlisted in the junior leaders when I was 16 at the Army Careers Office in Huddersfield. So yeah, it was just hanging around with these people that just influenced me, and like I say, I went and joined the junior leaders and the army cadets.
The catalyst that made me join the army, I was at school one day, and all I got told by the careers officer is that, oh well, you're going to go and be a nurse, or you're going to be cleaning bedpans and things like that, or you're going to be working in the mill. That was the choices that I had. There was nothing about, oh, how well I was doing, what other careers I could go. There was nothing like that. And then I heard some boys talking about the army, and I thought, oh, what's this army?
The reasons for his joining up, because in that era there was nothing really much going on for a black person in Huddersfield. Tried to get apprenticeships, I went for a lot of interviews, nothing was happening, and just one day my mum was looking through the Examiner, and there was an advertisement for the Air Force. So she asked me, and I says, well, I've got nothing to lose, Mum, I might as well try it. And that's the reason why I went for the Air Force. You know what I mean? And it's a good experience, good and bad experiences.
It was a gamble, one that came with risks that they understood too well. The sting of racism, the burden of working in a traditionally white-dominated field, the uncertainty of where they might end up, yet still they chose to serve. Their reasons were as varied as their journeys, but one thing was true for all. They stepped forward in the face of doubt and found in the crucible of service a path to dignity and self-worth that can never be denied.
When I joined, I think I was shopping with my mum actually when I was about 16. I was shopping with my mum and I fell over. And I was carrying a shopping bag, and I remember I had eggs in the bag, and I rolled over, and I rolled over, and my mum shouted at me because she said, "Mind me eggs, mind me eggs." And so as I rolled over, the bag never touched the floor, and I never smashed the eggs, and she was shouting at me. So I put the bag down, and I marched down to the Army Careers office, and I went and signed up. And that what made me, I was just mad. That's it, I'm joining Army. So that's what I went and did.
When I joined the Armed Forces, my mother was proud, but she also was apprehensive of not knowing what I was going into, but all she wanted was for me to better my life. My father was 50-50, because I was brought up in a single parent family. My mother brought me up. So yes, it was good, really. It was good. She was very proud, and my sister was, and my brother.
When my dad arrived here, my dad, strong, militant, politically minded man. And when he landed here in 58, nobody ever called him the N-word. Nobody ever discriminated against him. He was a man who was well respected.
And so I decided with one of my cousins, I said, let's go down to the army recruiting office and see what this army is about. And we went there, and they told us what was what, and what we had to do, what trade was offered and things like that. And that's what made me, and my cousin didn't end up going. She stayed. My dad said, you're not going, and he wouldn't sign the paper. My mum said, she's going to go because there's nothing else here. She doesn't, I don't want her working in the mill, being a spinner in the factories. So yeah, let her go. So that's what inspired me, and I went all by myself.
And growing up watching my father fighting against racism, that's what I did. So I got in trouble with the police 2 or 3 times, got arrested. And the last time I got arrested, I think I was about nearly 19 years of age, and this copper said to me, he said, "You're obviously a good lad. This is the second time I'm arresting you. The next time, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to take you in. Why don't you join the forces? Join the forces, go and see the world and learn a trade." And that's exactly what I did. And I knew if I didn't join, I'd be in jail or something serious would have happened to me.
Once I'd signed the papers, my whole journey for the army started. I remember they saying to me, right, you've got to go to Guildford. I didn't even know where that was. But I thought, okay. And they gave me a train ticket. And I thought, I've never been on a train, because we used to go to London as a family to go and see my auntie, but we went on a coach. That was it. So I went on a train. I remember that long journey to London. To me, it took a long time.
My joining the military was spurred on by one particular incident. In 1979, my brother Cameron was always in trouble. He was constantly being brought back to the house by the police. He was constantly escaping out of the house to go to all the different clubs, predominantly the powerhouse down on Chapel Hill. And one day he was brought back home by the police, and part of his punishment was he would either go to Borstal or he could join the army.
And I remember getting off the train and I'm looking around and there wasn't one black face. So, you know, you kind of look at the person, somebody that you can make eye contact with, and there was nobody. So I was sort of stood there and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't think I've done the right thing. I think this is not good.
And now my father didn't like either of those two, because Cameron was he was under 17 at the time. And my father elected for him to go to join the army, which was the thing that he probably didn't like the most. My mother hated it because at the time, Northern Ireland was really heightened up, and that's all that was in her mind.
And, you know, I was 17 years of age, never been away from home. I had my little suitcase with all my little bits in. And then they put you in a room with 3 complete strangers. And it was awful. I cried the first night. I think I cried for a whole week, I think.
And I remember saying to my father, you know what, Dad? I'm going to go and look after him. And from that was the reason why I joined the army.
When I joined the armed services, I did not know what to expect. I was venturing into the unknown, right, just to better my life at that time.
I thought, oh my gosh, this is not what I want, because I think in those days I was quite timid and shy, or, you know, I never got into trouble, you know, so it was very, very difficult. And to remember, you know, trying to make friends with the people that were there. And I did eventually make some friends.
So June the 10th, 1980, I took myself off on the train to Swindon, Lincolnshire. And just about every one of my mates looked at me and kind of laughed and had a joke and said, you ain't gonna handle it, Raf. You know, it's about discipline. You know, it's about following orders. I said, yeah. Even I wasn't sure. But I was so determined not to lose face. Off I went.
Yeah, so I eventually completed the training, and then on I think it was the end of November, the 21st of November, I did my passing out parade. And my mum and my auntie came to see me, and I was so proud. And I was so proud, you know, to know that they saw me, and they spent, you know, my mum took the time to come down from Yorkshire to see my passing out parade, which was absolutely wonderful, and they had a great day.
The military is a brotherhood, a place of order, of discipline, but was it a place of fairness? For black soldiers and women in uniform, the answer was never simple. The armed forces evolved, but change was slow. Inclusion was promised, yet inequality remained. How does one navigate a system that both welcomes and resists? How does one find belonging in an institution built on hierarchy? These are the questions that shaped their service.
Oh yeah, my first impression of military life was excitement. You know, I just wanted to be involved. I just want to become someone within myself I accept.
Swindon, it was an eye-opener, because again, you look at the recruiting material and you say, well, this is what we're like, this is this and the other. Shock to my system, I'd been learning to fire a rifle. Didn't know that was, you know, I thought, oh, I thought that's the army's job, you know, but you know, you live and learn.
Well, my first impression of the military, based on what they talked to me about it, they explained it to me, is like, okay then. Because coming from Jamaica, and I see our Jamaican soldiers like on the road working with the police officers, I thought it would have been the same here in the UK, but it wasn't. When I realized that, okay, it's like you're going through training and then you get it's like the place in the battalion, and then they get shipped off to an outside country, you know what I mean, working and doing other different kind of roles and other different kind of jobs there.
My trade was infantry. When you say infantry, we are the people that you in all these different war films you see, or when people are going on their Xboxes and they've got their helmet and the different types of weapons in front of them attacking different, that's what we do. Our job was to go in and defend or go in and attack, and that's what infantry do.
A typical day in the Duke of Wellington Regiment is, you know, getting up in the morning, having your breakfast, and then once you have breakfast, you go straight to the gym. And then you go and do some fitness, and then you come back, and then you'll get the day's activities, whatever it is.
So my first impression when I came here, it was, you know, I'd say slightly apprehensive, slightly scary. I managed to get on with the recruiting officer at the time, a young sergeant. It was an Indian sergeant as well who recruited me in, and I managed to chat to him about certain things, and he sort of like blended me into how the army is. And
because remember, it's like coming from Jamaica, joining an international army, and they give me a tank to drive. You know what I mean? They're giving me bombs. They you know what I mean? I'm flying around in big helicopters and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Big boats. It was like we're handling hundreds of millions dollar worth of kit we're handling. So it was, you know, it was an experience for me, and it was also fun for me at the time. You know what I mean?
Went to Ireland twice, 72. It was the worst place on earth, I think. Londonderry. 97, that's when the IRA came out in force. There wasn't 1 minute of the day there wasn't one gunshot or things being blown up. And we had to patrol this. It was a very volatile situation.
But that's the first time I really, really, really got the taste of racism against me in the regiment at that time in Colchester.
The military promised order, discipline and brotherhood, a world where merit, not skin colour, would shape your fate. But for many black soldiers and veterans of the Windrush generation, the reality was far more complex.
I guess the racism and discrimination I faced and my other colleagues in the military was one of an institutional and structural level.
Racism and all these other isms and schisms are doing the rounds nowadays, but you know, say late 70s, early 80s, me walking into some villages and some rooms and some places, it must have been for the people that are watching me the same as sort of Dr. Livingston and co walking through the jungle and meeting people and them looking at each other, what the hell is this?
There was one or two that stick by me, but you know, it was like, you know, I'd put my shirts, you had a uniform, you had white shirts, and there'd be somebody in the platoon, they would take my shirt and throw it on the floor and make it dirty. You only got two, and you had to make sure you washed them and clean them. I could never find who did it. Nobody would ever own up to it. And then when I did complain to the trainers, they said, you know, grow up, you know, you're a big girl now, so do that sort of thing yourself.
So for instance, when I was at Catterick on my basic training, the black guys would be given the 47-pound GPMG, general purpose machine gun, and the white guys would get the rifle, which was about 22, 24 pounds, if I can remember. And when I kind of clocked this and noticed all these things happening, and I said, how come we always have these heavy weapons? And the other guys don't have it. He said, shut up, Brown, you've got longer arms.
In the ranks, they faced a different kind of battle, subtle slights and outright hostility, a system that claimed equality yet too often fell short. Some of the veterans recall the sting of words meant to belittle, others the doors that were quietly closed, promotions that never came, opportunities that seemed just out of reach.
Cosford was very difficult because there were some guys that would go out on an evening, go to the NAFE. These 3 or 4 guys would come back after drinking, you know what I mean, in the naffy, they would make their way to my bed and they'd be saying, get back on your banana boat, you nigger, blah, blah, blah. And they were saying this in front of everybody else.
And I had a problem where we were all on parade. One time, one guy chucked the egg at me. With this for parade, my clothes were all clean. He'd got an egg, smashed the egg and chucked the egg at me. Everyone was having a laugh.
Now, that was the most difficult time in my Air Force career, because at that point, I could easily have reacted, right, and defended myself, and you know what I mean. But I knew if I would have highlighted this to anybody superior, they would say, this guy has got a chip on his shoulder. So all I had to do was bite my pillar, right, and say that I am here for me, I am not here for them. And that got me through that period.
One Sunday afternoon, I was in the Saga. All of a sudden, on all the Falls Road, they opened up. For at least 15 minutes, God is my witness. For at least 15 minutes, they peppered my place.
But I waited till the afternoon, I got 2 eggs, smashed them, and when we went back on parade, in the afternoon parade, I chucked it all over his head, the head. He wanted to fight me, but I said, let's come on, let's fight. And that's when I started being a bit militant then. I started being militant then because I thought then I had to stick for myself. I couldn't be this nice boy who wanted to be a nice boy. I had to start being militant then. So I started being militant where people, they didn't mess with me because they know I would hit straight away. So they didn't mess with me. So I had that little respect from them.
Nothing was done. I was completely alone. I had gun, I had a SLR rifle, I had some machine gun. It's no good to me. You can't think. I just decide, okay, what can you do? That was another experience that stained my life, you know, but what I'm thinking up till now, how come nobody didn't say anything? I didn't hear over radio that said shots been fired, nothing. It was like total silence. But I was going through that. And even if you were deaf, you must have heard that. I've always wondered that. I wonder what the story is to that.
So back in my recruit days, back in 81, I was walking on a parade square and somebody shouted out, like, get that end off my parade square. And obviously I made sure I walked off it because they could say that.
Just the names, Taff, Paddy, Jock, Coon, Midnight, Sunblock, the N-word. It was just ridiculous.
Stuff like, we'll say, racist jokes would just be classed as banter, and you just got on with it.
For me, you see in my neighborhood, I wasn't having it one iota, and I got myself into a lot of problems regarding the discipline.
Now coming up to 2015, 2018, things had changed. No sexist jokes, no racist jokes. And if somebody made a sexist or racist joke, they'd be jumped all over.
There was an institutional and structural culture in there that had no room for people of colour.
Now, that person probably get locked up.
And yet the culture, the institution, we know it as banter, but actually there was a lot of people crying in the dark.
Weird as it may sound in the 21st century, but I can remember walking into places and the stereotypical music stopped. You know, you could hear people's necks creaking to, you know, and well, wait a minute. I wear a damn uniform, you know what I mean? I've taken it off, you know, whatever. I was born in this country, for crying out loud. Forget all your nonsense.
Yet even in the face of these injustices, they stood firm. They found allies, carved out spaces of belonging, and wore their uniforms with dignity. For some, the military became a proving ground, testing not only their skill but their resolve to challenge the racism that sought to define them. Through each veteran's story, a truth emerges. Service alone did not guarantee acceptance, but it forged a spirit of resistance and pride that could not be broken.
On my 21st birthday, this section commander, my section commander, we were training for Ireland. We only had 2 beers to give, there was nothing to do. He organized this fellow. He had his guitar and he organized to get a couple of crates of beer and everybody, and we had to sing song. And the guy actually played his heart off for me that day.
So I signed up initially for 9 years, and I should have, within that time frame, managed to, grab that, get the experience under my belt and walk away as a civvy. It transpires, it took me 15 years and trips to the Falklands and other specialist courses backwards and forwards to Locking and Weston-super-Mare before I finally got the opportunity. And I did 15 years and I got my ranks and my badges and my tapes and whatever accolades came and went with it. And it wasn't in the script for me to sort of stay that long, but at the end of the day, I wasn't going to leave without what I came in for.
One day, we had a report of a IRA bomb, which we kept updates. Well, every 5 minutes you get updates into what's happening, every possibly. We've checked and there's no this, there and that. Later on in the day when we finished, I was supposed to be and my friend go and help them, but we got tired. So we went down, back down to the barracks, unload our gun, take bulletproof, got our mess tins, which we got our food in. Upon doing that, I just said, the building just rattles and shook like, like a suddenly hurricane or something.
1980, the first trip was to Ireland, 1980. I was going to say, my mom always said the Irish and the blacks were always together, and there's the saying coming on the doors, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, what I mean? That was written on doors, so they were in the same situation.
So what happened? We all ran out, grabbed our guns, probably some not even put in the bulletproof vest on. And suddenly this officer came, the captain came, and he gave us such a telling off. And for my life, I couldn't understand why. But then he said, that's what the IRA do. They actually make something happen and know what's gonna happen. And they'll have snipers to pick you up as you come along. So we was proper together, we were marching unit when we went there. Upon that, unfortunately, I don't know if it's something you wanna, I saw two of my friends, my two friends, my section commander and section 2 section commander, they got blown up. And it involved me, I had to pick up bits of their body. And believe me, it's a sad thought. I can't forget that because, I saw in bits of him on this bowling green, it's just a bit too much, Thing about it, I've let it all pass all the time, and the first time it's got to me like this, it's bloody 50 years ago.
The uniform comes off, the medals gather dust, but the memories remain, and so do the struggles. For many black veterans, returning to civilian life was another battle. Jobs denied, support scarce, the weight of service met with indifference. Some found solace in their communities, others in silence, but all carried with them the experiences that shaped them, experiences Britain has too often forgotten.
When I came out and I landed in Surrey Street, I thought, why did I leave? I went to Huddersfield and there was no jobs. There was nothing. The textile industry had gone. There was nothing. And the friends that I left behind, they had all changed.
When I came out of the Air Force, it was difficult. And it took me at least 3 or 4 years to get back into civilian life because people were used to me coming and going back. They weren't used to me coming and staying. So it was hard to forge a relationship.
When I came out of the army, I went to work for a military unit as a civilian. So the transition wasn't hard.
Didn't have a clue. So when I came out, I was unemployed for 6 months when I came out. I didn't have a clue where to go, I didn't know what to do.
I know a lot of people who transitioned out and found it very difficult.
So I had paid £700 to come out of the army and went on the dole.
And my role was to test a lot of the cabling equipment before they went into storage.
What a lot of people don't realize, when you join up, they break you as a civilian and turn you into this soldier, disciplined fighting machine, takes orders without question. And when you leave, that 6 weeks resettlement doesn't change any of that.
Resettlement course, did it help? Not really.
So it's a very, very lonely place. Not many people get you. Not many people have your discipline. And why should they? They haven't been through what you've been through.
It felt like they were just doing something, so it showed as if they were doing something, but it was just like, see you later.
Coming back into Civil Street, it wasn't hard for me because remember I was a civilian before. But then when I come back to Civil Street, up until today, I still got the military mentality. I still got the military mentality. You know what I mean? Like turn up on time, don't be late, kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Clothes off, clean and iron and all them something there.
I didn't look at being treated as a veteran or anything like that. I was just like I was in the army and I came out. You know, my knowledge of the broader way of things and how you look at things now was not there.
It's interesting. I mean, it's something that I'd been planning from day one. You know, I always had in my head, I'm going to get out one day. This is not my career. It's not my life.
Coming back to the UK in '92, we came back to living in Huddersfield. I liked it. It was a difference because it was a big change in my life because you'd seen things that you thought you had left and it would have changed, but it didn't change. Yeah, Huddersfield was still the same.
For many, the military mindset lingered. The instinct to obey orders, the habit of precision, the readiness for conflict. These traits were forged in uniform, and they did not fade easily. Some found it difficult to adjust to a world with no chain of command, no clear mission. They faced confusion in workplaces that did not share their discipline, and frustration in systems that lacked the certainty of military life.
Even to this day, I know I'm different.
I had opportunities, but like I still didn't have no idea of what to do, who to go to.
You find yourself occupying two spaces at the same time. You've come back to your hometown, as in my neighborhood, but actually I'd changed. They haven't changed, I've changed. And that's when it became really, really difficult.
The careers information, they want to direct you where they want to direct you. From school, they tell you, you're not going to be this, you won't be worth this, you can't do this. Just sickle to that or that, and that's it. You'd have no use. They just all put you down before you start.
My family, my whole life was always out in Civil Street, and if I'm honest, how I managed to navigate those 15 odd years, when I put on my uniform, I was Air Force Terry. As soon as I left the base, I was normal Terry, you know what I mean? And that I managed to sort of balance the life over those 15 years that way.
I changed a big way myself, quality of life, because living in Germany and traveling across Europe, seeing people can live different, you can live different, there's nicer things to do, there's nicer places to go. And the one that downfall you had when you come back to Huddersfield was, I said, the people haven't changed, things carried on the same way as it was before you left.
For example, the first night I came back out of the military, just down the road there, my mate said they'd pick me up. They'd said they'd come at 9:30. I got outside for 9:25, because I'd never had to wait for anybody in the last 6 years. 10:15 they rolled up. One big argument ensued outside my house down there. We never went out. And it was those little things.
You know, when my parents and I went back and they could see what I'd done and what I'd achieved and who I was, they were really proud of me. And my aunts, my uncles and everybody else were also proud of me.
You know, part negativity. There's more good things about the army than negative things about the army. And bit by bit, everybody around me just seemed to warm to me and helped you out and became like a band of brothers.
And I think I inspired a couple of my cousins. They went into and they did the reserves. A lot of people went into the reserves because they thought, well, it's okay. You're a black woman, but it's okay for you to do it. Because it was one of those jobs, it was a no-no. You know, going in the army, you know, it's just not one of those things.
When I came out, it was always my intention to move back up to Yorkshire because all my sort of trade and expertise was based in the southeast, and personally, you know, I ain't got time for that side of the country at all. So I was quite prepared to move back to Yorkshire.
On leaving the Air Force, you do go on a resettlement course, right? And this is whereabouts I ended up working, like I said, for 3Ts in London, but I wasn't balanced. I wanted to go home. So even though I went on this course, do you know what I mean? I still, myself, I wanted to go back to Huddersfield because that was my home. And that's what I did. I came back.
I did that my bit, and I was glad. Because the reason why, when I bought myself out, it was a release and a relief. I didn't get nowhere. I enjoyed my time, but I didn't achieve nothing much apart from the experience, which sometimes is necessary. But being a farmer, operating so much animals and things, you do develop that control, and it's come by experience. If you don't experience things, you don't know. You know, never mind what someone tells you, there might be just one question and answer missing that changed the whole concept of everything.
I had some dark days, some really dark times, self-isolated. It was a real tough 3 years adjusting. And I decided, I've got to stop thinking that I can't mix with civvies because I'm a civilian now with military thinking.
If I'm honest, it took me more than the 15 years that I served to really come close to being a part of society as a whole.
Well, the beauty about the reservists, you are more civilian than you are military. And this is why I always turn around and say, the regular army can learn from the reservists because we live in civilian life and then we do the military bit on a weekend. So we can adapt to civilian life very quickly and we can adapt to a lot of things more quickly than regular soldiers. So I think it was an easy transition.
So I ended up turning to education. And the more I learned was the more I wanted to learn. Set me on that road to be in Milton as a civilian with still a lot of military thinking.
Decades have passed, faces have changed, but the echoes of the past remain. Today, black soldiers continue to serve, to contribute, to stand on the shoulders of those who came before them. Has the nation learned? Has the military truly evolved? For those who walk this path, the answers vary. But one truth is certain, without them, Britain's history would be incomplete.
If somebody asked me, if a young person asked me about, you know, I want to join the army, what's the best way to do, what's the best thing to do, I would probably turn around to that young person and say, well, if I was going to join the army, try and pick a career in the army. Try and go for one of the services, one of the engineers, REME, learn technical radio equipment, something, or go for nursing, something that you can, when you leave the army, you can bring it with you.
I'd encourage it. I think you can use it to an advantage for yourself now. In the days gone by, you couldn't really. It was harder. It was hard to get through. You go to regiments now, and you go to regiments now, you see black sergeant majors walking around all over the place. The days early gone by, you might see one or two. Now it's changed.
My experience in the armed forces was life-changing. Didn't know it at the time, but looking back, life-changing.
I think it helps you to focus yourself. And yes, I would encourage them to go, but I would say to them, make sure you go in there and take the opportunities, because now there's more opportunities for them. They can get educated, they can do a degree, they can go for officers. We weren't offered anything like that at all.
Well, if a young black person approached me, wondering when to sign on, said, why do you want to sign on? Is it going to say adventure? Is it going to say experience? Is it going to say comradeship? Is it about discipline? Any of those things, I say yes.
Oh God, it has influenced my life a great deal. It's made me the person that I am when I'm open-minded. Do you know what I mean? I treat people with respect. I expect to get, you know what I mean, respect back.
The thing that I remember most about my time in the military is the people. Is that I met some fantastic people. They've stayed with me from the time I left up until this day. The camaraderie that I have with those people has been amazing, and I know I can count on them as true friends.
I met some incredible people, friends that are still my friends today. When I left the Royal Air Force, I never wanted to speak to anybody again because that's how I felt. And a few of the lads I met playing football and in the regiment, they just kept ringing me, asking me how I was and pulled me back in to being part of that whole veteran support mechanisms that we have.
You know something? The people that I've met and the black soldiers, be RAF, be Army, that I've met, we are still friends today. We're like a community.
I will never be against the Army. These poor guys, some of them been through hell, as have I, in experience. So there's no way I'm gonna look down on them.
You know, I've done something, I've contributed a lot to the British Armed Forces. I gain a lot from them up until today. So, you know what I mean, I've got no complaints, I've got no regrets. You know, it could be a lot more, but I think the universe just said, look, it's my time.
What it taught me was, the Army's taught me to be resilient, to keep going, never give up, and always pursue what you're looking for. Pursue it, never give up, and never give in. That's what it's taught me, never give in.
So I think the support for veterans is essential. And I'm saying it now, there's not enough, and especially for black veterans. Tommy's Lounge, both the charity and the cafe, is an outstanding organisation that we have here. And then the other one I know I've been working with quite closely is the Forgotten Generations in Birmingham, who really look at black veterans and focuses and drill down on black veterans and heroes in Birmingham.
One of the things that when you're in the Army, as you know, is that you have to be able to navigate. There's a lot of positive things I've said about the Army that was good for me, but there's also another side of it that I had to deal with, the negativity, the people that didn't want us there.
I've got a very good social life with social skills. That's all down to the Air Force, you know what I mean? And it shaped me, and I've used it. It's a tool that I've used in civilian life. Taken a while, but we got there.
I don't claim to be a hero. I don't claim to be no big shot. But yeah, I'm proud the fact that I managed to go in there. I made my parents, my family proud, I believe. But I achieved something, you know, at the end of the day, I achieved what I went in for.
I can't tell you how much I got from the Air Force, what the Air Force gave me. It pushed me to find things about myself that I didn't know. It challenged me to keep my mouth shut even though I wanted to say something. And it taught me what it means to be in a team, looking after your fellow soldier. These skill sets are for life. And I will never knock the Air Force. When I look back, I think I got more out of the Air Force than what the Air Force got out of me. And I'm grateful for that.
I think it is about time that we get recognised of the things that we achieve. We need to be in the history books. We need to let our children know, be proud of what the Caribbean people contributed, not just in trying to build the country, but actually went to war to save. And this is why we're proud to be British. And this is why I joined the Army, because I'm proud to be British, even though sometimes we're not accepted.
brought me this far. I don't believe he brought me this far. I don't believe he brought me this far. I don't believe he brought me this far.